Hello, my name is Dakota DeWindt, and this is my Concepts and Principles video presentation. To start, what is ABA? ABA stands for Applied Behavior Analysis, which refers to a scientific approach used to best understand behaviors and how they are positively or negatively impacted by their environment. Practitioners within this field often provide services to individuals with autism or other neurological disorders, and their work is spent analyzing behaviors, implementing interventions, writing individualized goals with the end goal of improving socially significant change in behaviors. With ABA, it comes with 7 general dimensions that provide a very solid groundwork to help ensure we are designing and delivering interventions that are scientific, ethical, and effective. The 7 dimensions are as follows: applied, behavioral, analytical, technological, effective, conceptually systematic, and generality. Applied refers to socially significant change, so is what we're doing improving the quality of life of the individual. Behavioral is focusing on observable and measurable change in behaviors, so objective and observable behaviors, not subjective thoughts or feelings. Analytical, it means data. Data is important in ABA. ABA is data-driven, and without it, we have no way of demonstrating a correlation between intervention and behavior change. Technological ensures that procedures are clear, concise, and replicable, meaning that anyone in or outside this field is able to replicate the intervention exactly how it was written. Effective, it means we are desired change is timely and significant. Conceptually systematic ensures that procedures are only based off of scientific principles, and generality is ensuring that behavior change is long-lasting and it's not a waste of time. What is operant conditioning? Operant conditioning is a process where rewards and punishments and their consequences result in an increased or decreased frequency of behavior under the same future conditions. In operant conditioning, oftentimes practitioners use the 3-term contingency, which we will learn about later, but it involves making a relation between environment, behavior, then followed by the consequence. It can use positive and negative punishment or reinforcement to better effectively increase or decrease the target behavior. Within operant conditioning, we use ABC data, which is a great foundation for many effective behavior modification changes. An example of operant conditioning is an individual desires to teach their dog to sit by placing the demand to sit. This is a common operant conditioning in this field that helps learn the concept. Once you place the demand to sit, the dog sits and then is provided praise with a treat of sorts. As a result, the dog will more than likely begin to sit when the demand sit is placed in the future. As previously mentioned, the 3-term contingency. What is the 3-term contingency? It demonstrates how behaviors are learned and maintained through the immediate environment, often referred to as ABC data, which stands for antecedent, behavior, and consequence. The antecedent to a behavior is what happens before. What was the precursor? The behavior is what is a behavior? Aggression, tantrum. The consequence is what occurred following the behavior. Was he redirected? Was he given space? Etc. An example of the 3-term contingency is an individual struggles with math tests and chooses to study harder for their next test. As they receive their first 95, they receive praise from both their parents and the teachers, and as a result, they will more than likely study more for their tests in the future. Functional relationships. A functional relationship is referred to as a connection between behavior and consequence. And a functional relationship between behavior and consequence can also be seen as a reliable change between independent and dependent variables. The independent variable being the environment and the dependent variable being the behavior. Functional relationships utilize the four functions of behavior to help describe the causal relationship. An example of a functional relationship is a teacher tells all the students to go read for reading time when an individual engages in tantrum behavior. The practitioner reduces the demand by either offering a picture book or another activity. As a result, the individual displays a decrease in tantrum behavior as a result of reducing the response effort to read the book. This demonstrates a causal relationship or a functional relationship between tantrum behavior and reading books. When the teacher said it was time to read, he engaged a tantrum. When the reading was taken away or reduced, the tantrums were reduced. As previously mentioned, the functional relationships are often described using the four functional behaviors, which are escape, tangible, access, attention, and sensory. Escape behavior is behavior that is used with the goal to avoid an unfavorable task. An example is a child is asked to clean up and instead property destructs and throws his toys opposed to cleaning them up. That is escape maintained behavior. Access is any behavior that is used to effectively gain access to a preferred item or activity. For example, functionally communicating your want for a toy. If a kid asks for a toy, that is a function of behavior to gain access to that preferred item. Attention is any behavior that is used to gain any attention from another individual, both positive or negative. This could be maybe your mom isn't paying attention to you, so you scream to get her attention. That would get negative attention. Or you go tap on her shoulder. That would get positive attention by appropriately getting her to look at you before you say something. And sensory is any behavior that is used to provide sensory stimulation and support, meaning rocking, hand flapping, spinning, any automatic reinforcement that the individual engages in is a sensory function of behavior. Positive and negative reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is when a stimulus is added to the immediate environment in hopes to increase the future likelihood of that behavior. You can imagine negative reinforcement would be the opposite. Negative reinforcement is when a stimulus is removed from the environment following a behavior to increase the future likelihood of that behavior. The goal is to increase the behavior because it is still reinforcement. An example of positive reinforcement is if a child was asked to clean their room and did so without being told again, they received ice cream from their mom for hard work. An example of negative reinforcement is a child finishes their homework without being told to do so. As a result, their mother took away their chores for that night because they finished their homework without asking. Both of those would in the future likely increase cleaning up their room or doing their homework as a result of the reinforcement. Positive and negative punishment are similar in the sense of adding and removing a stimulus from the immediate environment, but in this case, we're working to decrease the future likelihood of that behavior. An example of positive punishment is a child did not complete their homework when asked to do so. As a result, they are required to now clean the dishes on top of their other chores, including cleaning their room and sweeping the floor. Negative punishment could be a child drew on the wall in their room with crayons. As a result, their mother takes away their art supplies. So positive, they added a chore, but it was in the hopes to likely decrease the behavior of not doing their homework. And negative, they took away the crayons as a likelihood to decrease the coloring on the walls in the future. Some ethical considerations of punishment are pretty simple and straightforward. And when you're thinking of punishment in any sense, you want to make sure you are considering client dignity, client safety, and consent. And in ABA, punishment procedures should always be the last resort. They are the most intrusive intervention and oftentimes can elicit negative responses of negative behaviors. So, practitioners should always prioritize the least intrusive intervention and utilizing positive behavior supports, positive reinforcement strategies, and being proactive instead of reactive before considering a punishment procedure as a form of intervention for the individual. What is stimulus control? Stimulus control is referred to as the relation between a behavior or a response being influenced by a specific stimulus. When a behavior comes under control of a stimulus, practitioners have the hope that that stimulus will continue to elicit the response reliably when the stimulus is presented, and essentially is controlling the behavior. A great way to develop stimulus control is when you find a stimulus that is preferred, only reinforcing the target behavior using that stimulus and nothing else. If you reinforce that behavior with other stimulus, then you will lose the control of the initial, and you will have to perform a stimulus control transfer to find something that is just as effective to elicit the behavior reliably. And lastly, we have the four-term contingency, which is very similar to three-term contingencies in the sense that it uses ABC data, antecedent behavior consequence, and focuses on how behaviors are learned through functional relations and correlations between behavior and consequence. However, the difference between the two is that four-term contingencies look much deeper than that. They look at the motivating operations side of things. What motivated the behavior before the ABC occurred? Four-term contingency determines the needs of the individual, whether it's value altering or behavior altering, and then effectively implements intervention based off of what has been found. Without understanding the true motivation of the individuals, practitioners risk creating ineffective interventions or interventions that may elicit other negative behaviors. And finally, over the course of the semester, I've learned a lot of things, but doing this assignment and this presentation, I've come to terms with that the most remarkable concept or principle that I learned this semester was the four functions of behavior. From the outside in, behavior is just behavior. A normal human who's not in the field of ABA doesn't understand fully why a kid is screaming, why a kid is hitting, why a kid is property destructing. They just see it as it is and not the antecedent behavior consequence behind it. But as a practitioner, they see more than that. We see more than that. It's remarkable to me that such a simple concept as access, escape, attention, and sensory, the four foundations of functional behavior, can really do such a great job at laying the groundwork for explaining why might behavior has occurred, opposed to the behavior just occurred because it occurred. So I really think functions of behavior is a skill that not only practitioners and individuals in ABA should use, I think that should be common knowledge across the population. Thank you.